Hi guys, welcome to Westminster Uncensored. I'm Michael Heber.
I'm Patrick Christie's.
And lots to get through today. Concessions in the Brexit negotiations, Donald Trump's played a blinder, and more fallout from the Italian election. As ever, jump in, tell us what you think, get involved. And Patrick, where else to start, I think, but these Brexit negotiations?
Yes, absolutely. One by one, are we watching the key pillars of Brexit come crumbling down, eroded by a government seemingly more intent on appeasing Brussels than enforcing the will of the people. We've seen concessions on the ECJ already and an apparent admittance that Britain won't seek competitive advantage over the EU once we've left. But are we about to see the ultimate Brexit betrayal on immigration and on fisheries? That would, of course, lead you to the question, is this really Brexit at all? That's what we're leading in on this version of Westminster Uncensored. So as always, give us your views because we are live and interactive.
Yeah, guys, you can see the story there now. Basically, this stems from a report by James Forsyth. He's usually a very sort of credible journalist.
Good sources.
Got a lot of good sources. He's basically written that the idea has been muted, that if the EU doesn't bite on Theresa May's proposals, Britain could offer concessions on immigration in an attempt to make them more palatable. Now, I don't know about you, we've said this quite a few times here on Westminster Uncensored, but for immigration to potentially be used as a bargaining chip in these negotiations, I don't know about you guys, I think that's a very dangerous road to go down. Leave voters, for me, that was their number one priority, was to end open borders, end freedom of movement, and radically reduce net migration to the tens of thousands. After all, that is what the Conservative government have been promising for a number of years now. So we're seeing now for the first time, potentially, Patrick, a sellout on this issue. Guys, let us know what you think. Are you worried about this? Do you think it will happen? Or do you have faith in the government that they'll hold firm?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I think immigration was clearly a key factor in most people voting for Brexit, but there were others as well. There was the whole kind of wish to regain national sovereignty through kind of taking back control of our legal system, our waters, and obviously our border controls. And if these things are all one by one being watered down, it's a slippery slope, isn't it? And do we end up in a situation where nobody's happy? The Remainers aren't happy because, of course, we have left the EU, even if it's just in name only. And the Brexiteers aren't happy because none of the key pillars of Brexit have actually been delivered. So Theresa May might be on a road to pleasing nobody at the minute.
As ever, lots of comments flying in already. Thank you very much. By the way, guys, do help us. Give us a retweet. Give us a like. We've got Marcus on Facebook saying May needs to sack Hammond, like Farage said on Twitter. He's a surrender merchant. Kay, obviously, very unhappy as well. Thank you for your comment, Kay, saying not what we voted for. Get the Mogg and leave now. Blimey, that's got to be a record
already
for Mogg getting brought up without any mention or reference whatsoever from us. And Graham saying Remainers will never be happy no matter what. Frank on Facebook as well, thank you very much for your comment, Frank, saying she will submit anything to keep in with the EU. So obviously a lack of faith amongst you for Theresa May. Now the reason that we know migration, guys, is such an important issue, as ever, guys, you can see all of this on westminster.com, is we've done another story about the latest A&E waiting times, another record high. We're seeing the NHS actually saying unprecedented pressure now on the NHS. Just 85% of patients seen within 4 hours in A&E, nearly 23,000 operations cancelled. The Chief Executive of NHS Improvement saying these figures show the continued and unprecedented pressure facing NHS services. Staff have coped with a substantial growth in demand for emergency care. And you know, it shows you once again, guys, and you won't see this on any reports in the mainstream media about hospitals or schools or housing, and we keep talking about it, we keep mentioning it here on Westminster Uncensored, but the fact that you've just seen the largest annual population growth for 70 years, 538,000, surely, and by the way, that's been fueled by mass migration, surely that is what we need to be talking about. The fact that we've got over 500,000 people each year worth of population growth being fueled by mass migration, surely that is a significant factor now on why we are seeing an NHS crisis, a housing crisis, and demand really just surging for public services.
Well, I think if James Forsyth is right here and he's saying that basically Theresa May is willing, if the EU doesn't chomp on the concessions that she's already made, if she was willing to then put forward proposals that would compromise Britain's migration policy. Some may be concessions here on the free movement of people, etc. That's kind of tone-deaf policy making, isn't it, from the bods there in Westminster? Because really that was a key platform of Brexit. It's something that would be seen as an ultimate betrayal of people. And also it's where does that end, you know? And I think really people would like to see her take more of a strong stance. This ties into the narrative that Theresa May is this great appeaser, you know, and compare that, as we're going to come on to in the show, about Trump's policy on North Korea and the relative success that seems to be about to have. Compare that to Theresa May's approach, which seems to be giving at all costs. It's two contrasting negotiating styles there, and one has so far worked and the other one doesn't look to be working.
Some very interesting comments on Twitter here, highly sceptical of the Prime Minister. We've got Steve saying the Conservative Party is a disgrace and Theresa May is as much used as a chocolate teapot. So you're obviously not a big fan, are you? Oh, Stevie, I should say.
Someone here as well called Activists for Truth saying we accept compromise, we will not accept capitulation. I think that's quite an important point there.
JDQ on Twitter with quite an interesting comment saying May was put in place to keep the UK in the EU. So it's very interesting, I think, how amongst some Brexiteers there's still the idea, and guys, let us know if you agree or disagree with this, that Brexit isn't going to actually happen. Some of you guys don't have any faith whatsoever that we're even going to see what people voted for. So very, very interesting comments flying in. Keep them coming, guys.
Oh, yeah, and as ever, let us know where you're commenting from. We had some great respondents last show. We had someone from Australia has chimed in today, someone from my hometown in Manchester as well. So please do let us know where you're coming from. We want to build this global audience here at Westminster.
Now, guys, you will have noticed that on Wednesday we weren't around, but as you know, it's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's the routine. We'll be back on Monday. It's 1 o'clock. So get it down in your diary so you don't miss a thing. We were only away for one day. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 o'clock UK time. Now, another interesting story from this week, guys. Really, really big, this one. EU guidelines that have been issued. And again, you can go to westminster.com. By the way, you can see the red alert email sign up on any of our stories. Go and get signed up. Get on our emailing list so you can see all this stuff in your inbox. The EU wants to carry on plundering British fisheries post-Brexit and stop the UK using independence for competitive advantage. The sheer cheek of what's in these EU guidelines is quite astounding. Very, very clear on what they want. The aim should be to prevent the unfair competitive advantage that the UK could enjoy through undercutting of current levels of protection with respect to state aid, tax, social, environment and regulatory measures and practices. So the EU openly basically saying, yeah, you can have Brexit, but don't try and take competitive advantage, guys.
Yeah.
Don't you dare use your independence to try and gain competitive advantage. That simply isn't acceptable.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, you know, realistically, wasn't this one of the key pillars again of Brexit that we're seeing here? The fact that if we were outside of the European Union, if we were free from the shackles of the customs union, etc., we could then be able to go and trade globally with whoever we like, whenever we want to, therefore becoming this thriving global nation. Now, this is a demand from Brussels. Sorry, do you mind not being quite as successful as you'd like to be post-Brexit? I mean, this sounds absolutely outrageous. It's basically asking Britain to limit its future prosperity just to make sure that other countries in the European Union don't see the benefits, actually, of maybe standing on your own 2 feet and leaving the Brussels bloc. I find it absolutely outrageous. How can Brussels, this super state, led by unelected officials, obviously, now come and try and infringe how successful a non-member state can be once it leaves? It leads you to this point. You would think, what's more of a priority here? Securing some kind of trade deal with Brussels, presumably at the cost of stunting our future prosperity, or do we just go and sack them off and go and do our own thing and try and become a booming world power once again?
I'm afraid it gets worse. I mean, Patrick's annoyed. I'm pretty annoyed. It gets worse, guys, because in these EU guidelines, and this is, you know, you remember during the referendum campaign, the push for the British fishing industry. Yeah. Devastated, destroyed, almost wiped out by the European Union. The ability to take back control of our waters, incredibly important in Britain's vote to leave the European Union. The EU now saying they want to maintain existing reciprocal access to fishing waters and resources. They want that to be maintained. And guys, I think if the EU go down this road, and if the British government submitted, and we've got a couple of sort of worrying noises coming out now, but if the British government go down the road of giving an inch on Britain's fisheries and potentially selling out British fishermen, I think there's going to be a huge action.
Yeah, well, loads of comments here rolling in already on Facebook. Kevin Hagger saying, who had the biggest fishing fleet in the world? We did. Hull, to be precise. Gone. Nothing left. Let's get our waters back. And Paul Amat saying, we've always stood up to bullies in the past. When did we stop standing up to them. I mean, I find this absolutely ridiculous. The point I just touched on there about them basically saying to Britain, look, can you mind not seeking competitive advantage and being as successful as you could? And then them saying, do you mind if we keep knobbing into your national waters as well? Yeah, well, I think we do mind, don't we, really? Because this is ridiculous. Not only has Britain's fishing fleet been absolutely decimated, it was a key platform of Brexit. They really helped drive it home. They lost the most at the hand of the EU, and they stand to gain the most post-Brexit, and to try and stunt that industry. I mean, that's outrageous from Brussels, isn't it? Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? If we went to them, oh, actually, you know, so-and-so's got cracking fishing waters, say Spain, for example. Do you mind if we carry on relentlessly plundering those at your expense? They tell us where to go, and rightly so. It's time for us to grow a bit of a backbone here.
Alexander on Facebook saying, if we give Brussels an inch, they'll take a mile, as has been proven in recent times. Well, that's right, isn't it, guys? Isn't it? Isn't it right? I mean, if we start backing off and we give concessions on migration here, give concessions on the European Court there, a little bit on fisheries, is that really what people voted for? Because we've got a lot of Ramonas on the airwaves at the moment, gets the sort of guessing what Leavers voted for. I think people voted for full control, no ifs, no buts, end to open borders, full control of fisheries. Guys, if there's a back down on this, I think there's going to be huge anger.
Well, it shows the priorities of this government, doesn't it? Is your priority the prosperity and the success and the well-being of your own electorate, i.e. specifically with regards to the fishing communities that, as we've seen, have been absolutely decimated by Brussels? They've been sacrificed to the EU also before. Is the priority of the government to protect those people and to further their interests, or is it the bods there in Brussels? And at the minute, it's looking like actually Theresa May's priority, or the government's priority, is Brussels and not that of the British public. And that should come back to bite them in a big way at the next election.
Michael on Facebook, we're going to go to a few worrying stories in a minute, guys, but Michael on Facebook saying, one of my favourite things to watch. Well, thank you very much. From one Michael to another, thank you very much for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, please do give us a like. Please do give us a retweet on Twitter. Visit westmonster.com/support. We need your support, and we do very much appreciate it. Now, just go into a couple of these worrying sounds coming out of the government on fisheries, guys. Again, we go on westmonster.com. You can see the story there. Philip Hammond basically talking about... This is the exact quote, and it's a bit of a contradiction. He said, on one hand, fishing is an iconically important British industry, and we're very clear that we're taking back control of our waters. He then hinted at a sellout, saying we will be open to discussing with our EU partners the appropriate arrangements for reciprocal access for our fishermen to EU waters and for EU fishermen to ours. Now, Alan Hastings of Fishing for Leave, and these are the guys that are really at the forefront, on the front line of that Leave campaign. These guys know the fishing industry and all this legislation with the EU inside out.
You'll remember them from the Thames Flotilla, of course, telling Bob Geldof where to go. Fantastic.
Yeah, and Alan Hastings from Fishing for Leave said this. This was his response to Philip Hammond's comments. The government has consistently said fishing rights and the trade deal would not be linked, and it now seems they are trying to soften us up for a big disappointment. They are all testing the water to see how much they can get away with. As far as we're concerned at Westminster, guys, they can't get away with anything. We want full and complete control over our exclusive fishing zone, and this should not be used as a bargaining chip. British fishermen have been let down now for years and years and years, and the country voted Leave so that we can give these people their livelihoods back, and we can build an industry that should be much bigger in this country and can create jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of love on here for Philip Hammond. Has Hammond ever caught a fish in his life? That's from Kerry. Sack him now, Mark Forrest says. Hammond needs sacking. That's from David Laddie. And yeah, a few more. Caroline Henderson, sack Hammond. Well, it's a good job our viewers aren't Hammond's boss, because he will be joining the dole queue pretty quickly, no doubt. But look, let's cut through all the political jargon here in regards to the fishing. What Philip Hammond is saying is this, and if you'll notice, whenever the Tories say anything, this is some kind of coordinated effort here, they always start by saying, we've been very clear on this. And they go on to say something that's so murky that you can't see through it. So he said, we've always been very clear we'll be taking back control of our waters. No, he's not wrong. What he is saying is we are taking back control of our waters. We are then immediately going to agree to basically kind of pimp them out to every EU boat. Basically, that's what he's saying. So we're taking back control of our waters, only it would seem to give them back again straight away. And that obviously is not right. That's kind of weasel words there, classic political speak. And I don't understand how thick they think the British public are that we would swallow this kind of nonsense. Really.
Guys, keep your comments coming thick and fast. Just one more story I want to go to on this, on fisheries. We've got it up now. George Eustace, he was also sort of hinted at a softening of position. He basically said, we will manage fishing resources and manage access to our own waters. Now, that's all fine and dandy. But what are we actually going to agree here, guys? Because what we don't want to see is we don't want to see a position like the Labour Party where they try and be tricky-dicky and basically take the piss and say, oh no, we're leaving the customs union, we respect the referendum result, we're just going to rejoin a customs union that happens to do all of the same things. So we don't want to see a position where we leave the common fisheries policy and then sign up to a new common fisheries policy that basically continues to devastate the livelihoods of our British fishing industry. That would be completely unacceptable. So we're going to keep the pressure up at Westminster, guys. This is an absolute litmus test for us. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it really was at the forefront of that referendum.
Yeah.
And we cannot see a sellout on this, or migration, or frankly on anything else.
Absolutely. Well, look, we've had some comments coming in here just from Paul Wood, just saying, vote out the political system like they did in Italy. Now, we're going to come on to Italy there, but the interesting thing is we've had some comeback as well there saying, well, look, who do we vote for, Paul? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the Labour and the Tories both kind of outdo each other on how much of a Brexit betrayal they can muster. But here at Westminster, obviously, we are keeping the fight up. So you need to support us, please. Make sure when you go on our website, you visit Westminster.
Yeah, you can see it there, guys. We're going to bring it up.
Westminster.com/support. We need your help to grow.
Yeah, you've got the option there, guys. You can give us a single donation. If you can sign up for a monthly donation, lots of you have already contributed. We're really, really thankful. But if you go to westminster.com/support, you can help us grow. You can help us do more shows. You can help us go and do reports and lots of different things like that. If you support what we say and you like how we say it, we need your support. So please do go to westminster.com/support and help us however you can. Now, Boris, with some interesting comments. We know he always provokes an interesting reaction amongst you. I think a lot of you guys like him, some not so much.
A bit Marmite.
But what are these comments, Patrick, we're hearing now from Boris Johnson?
Yeah, well, basically, he's kind of talking up the idea of the no deal. I mean, he's saying a bit, well, maybe we would like to hear our Prime Minister say with regards to the fact that Britain is prepared to walk away from the negotiations if the EU continue to just basically try and hammer home their own objectives. He said, I've never been one of those who is apprehensive about the so-called no-deal scenario. No deal is better than a bad deal. If we have to come out on WTO terms, we will be prepared to do so. It doesn't hold terrors for me, and we will do very well under those circumstances as well. And it's good, isn't it? Because actually, one thing that was missing in Theresa May's last big Brexit speech, of course, was this kind of refusal to acknowledge the fact that Britain might walk away. And if that's your starting point in negotiation with Brussels, who have already played hardball on everything else and given no ground whatsoever, if you're starting from a position where you're not willing to say, oh, let's walk away, even if you don't really want to, even if you don't really mean it, you're just there saying, well, look, this is an option for us. If you're starting from that point of negotiating in, it's only going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. Boris, at least, seems to be putting the case forward.
Surely the point is, guys, if you're the government and you're going into a negotiation and you want a good deal, then the other side have to take the fact seriously, or the threat seriously.
Absolutely.
That you're prepared to walk away from the table.
It's not serious.
I think every single time you've got someone like Boris Johnson's Foreign Secretary saying, actually, we've got nothing to fear, we want a deal, but if we have no deal, it isn't the end of the world, that surely strengthens your negotiating position anyway. So why we're not seeing more of that, I don't know. But very interesting comments from Boris Johnson. Guys, what do you think of Boris?
Well, it's interesting. Marcus Fuhrer is saying that Boris says good things, but it never seems to happen. And you're not wrong there, Marcus. There's a lot of things. Boris is the master of this artful intervention that seems like he's promising the earth, and then actually, in practice, he just kind of backs down. He kind of says what he thinks to a point until it might cost him his job, and then he stays where he is.
Absolute barrage of comments on YouTube. Haven't forgot about you guys. All about Mogg and JRM. And, you know, it happens... Patrick, it happens no matter what we talk about. Every time we touch on Brexit, guys, we get it time after time. You guys, you know, big supporters of Mogg. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I keep saying, it's noticing a real trend of Brexiteers mounting behind this guy. You really seem to believe in him. But do you believe in this government? What do you think is going on with the Labour Party? Are there other aspects of Brexit that you're worried about? Dive in on the comments, let us know, and we will read out as many as
well. Paul is saying he wants no deal. He says if the EU wants a deal, then they can come to us. Mandy Carter's actually called Boris a buffoon and said, at least he wants out, and he's saying the right thing. I suppose you could argue that's more than the Prime Minister at the minute. Paul Wood saying 17.4 million Brexiteers wanted no deal. So there you go. Interesting stuff there, guys.
Yeah, very interesting poll that's come out yesterday. It was International Women's Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting poll. Now, you know, we often hear, don't we, about... I'll let you do this one, Patrick. Go on.
Well, yeah, well, obviously...
He's got it loaded up.
Obviously, moving away from Brexit now, then we are talking about International Women's Day that was on yesterday. Now, it turns out the majority of women think feminism has gone too far, or as far as it should. This, of course, would seem to fly in the face of the fact that we relentlessly get these radical feminists talking to us on national television all the time, being given a lot of airspace. Apparently, it would seem that women in the real world don't share their views.
Yeah, and we want to hear from any lovely ladies watching. We want
Yes.
because it's very interesting. As Patrick said, you hear a lot of it on TV about the sort of feminist agenda. Actually, what this Sky data poll shows, and of course, guys, it got completely buried. Virtually no one reported it. It was a Sky poll, and they sort of reported on it, but no one else really picked up on it. And I think it's fascinating. It shows you that majority of women, 58%, do not consider themselves feminists. And as Patrick said, 35% of women think that feminism has gone too far, and another 26% think it's gone as far as it should go. So basically, a majority of women think that feminism has either gone too far or as far as it should go. Not something I know that you ever really see said in the media or given any sort of voice whatsoever. So I thought, for me, it's interesting from the point of view is this is now the majority opinion that in terms of the media landscape and certainly the political landscape, you very, very seldom hear at all. So, if there's any ladies watching in particular, I'd love to know what you think about this poll. As ever, you can go and see this on mysponsor.com. But I found it very, very interesting.
Well, Tanis Pullen saying feminism has gone too far. They embarrass me, and I'm an old bird. I'm sure you're not. I don't refer to yourself like that. Helen Hannah saying it's gone way too far. It's interesting. I really want to get your comments coming in. Amanda, a regular on the show. Amanda, lovely to have you on as always. Saying sick to death of hearing about feminists, this and that. At the end of the day, there are some jobs men can do better and other jobs women can't. That's interesting, Amanda. I'm not sure I'd have gone that far myself, but there you go. Kerry saying, I think us females need a hashtag, not me. And Sharon saying, feminists give us decent women a bad name. Some strong views there from the Westminster women.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, one of the big stories that wasn't covered yesterday, and again, we covered it, is what is going on in Iran with women. Because this is, this isn't sort of... This is full-scale oppression. This is women being punished for not doing as they're told. This is women being punished and locked up for refusing to wear the hijab. And this particular woman in Iran, we hear, I don't think her actual name is known even, or hasn't been confirmed anyway, but she's basically got 2 years in prison in Iran. And what is her great crime? Her great crime is that she doesn't want to wear a hijab. And that is going on in 2018. I don't know about you. I think that's the type of thing that should be at the top of the feminist agenda. That women are getting treated like that in this day and age. Well, it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I do have a major gripe with this modern radical spin on feminism. And I want to make one thing very clear from the start. Any kind of discrimination or any kind of prejudice based along any grounds, obviously including gender, etc., has got no place in society and not something I would like to see. However, there seems to be this big push from certain sections of the feminist movement to paint Britain as this cradle of sexual discrimination and of gender warfare. But actually, I've got some facts for you here. If you actually bother to look at the bigger picture, in Sudan, 34% of women seem to think it's right that their husbands can beat them. The Congo is regarded by the UN as the rape capital of the world. In Iraq, 1 in 5 women are victims of domestic abuse. In Yemen, women have no equal rights on divorce. In Afghanistan, 1/3 of women are married by the time they're 18. And of course, in Saudi Arabia, we've seen that women now have the fundamental right to not just drive, but go to football matches as well. So hoorah for feminism in Saudi Arabia. I just think that realistically, the next time that you try to bracket Britain as this hotbed of sexual discrimination, maybe you need to have a bit of a word with yourself. And if you really cared about feminism, instead of going on Good Morning Britain, looking at a boxing ring girl or a grid girl in the eye and wanting to put them out of a job, why don't you shuffle off to Sudan and do some actual work there? How much of your wages are you giving to feminist groups combating real female oppression around the world? Why aren't you in Iran? Why are you talking about marginal small factions of British society? And I really think you need to give your head a wobble.
There you go, guys. Jane on Facebook saying the Iranian woman is a true feminist with a true cause.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's right that all over the world here we are seeing widespread female oppression, and it is right to be raised and it needs to be stamped out. My point is this relentless nitpicking from kind of overzealous feminazis here in Britain is not doing anything for the feminist cause. In fact, it's pissing a lot of people off. If you go abroad and do that and really tackle it there and change aspects there and big discrepancies, that would have more of an impact. You would then be, in my opinion, a true feminist.
Yeah, Mandy's saying, and so-called feminists don't bother about that.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it?
Amanda saying, regular on Westminster, thank you very much for joining us, Amanda, saying, nice Westminster women. I am a Westminster woman, yeah. I mean, Amanda's fired up, guys. Are you as fired up as her? If you're enjoying it, if you are fired up, if you're enjoying these broadcasts, do give us a like, do give us a retweet, do tell your friends, and do visit westminster.com, because we're only going to get bigger and better, baby.
Absolutely.
Now, moving on to another serious topic that we talk about a lot. I mean, guys, what's more important than the safety of us, our families, our loved ones? The terror arrests, the new stats have been out. We can see this on westminster.com. Record number of terror arrests in 2017, 412. That's up from 261 in 2016. We've revealed a number of things on Westminster. We've reported a number of things. Back in December, it was revealed that 9 Islamist plots have been foiled in 12 months. And more recently, we've been told that 4 or 5 far-right plots have been stopped as well. And, you know, it's a very damaging pattern, isn't it? It's a very worrying pattern, I should say, that we're seeing year after year more arrests, terror arrests. We're seeing more plots foiled. And obviously, sadly, we're actually seeing some plots being carried out on the streets of Britain. But it always comes back to me, one thing. When we've got this increase in this terror threat, when we're seeing it rise year after year, why have the government, and no one can give me a straight answer on this, why have the government allowed back hundreds of ISIS-supporting jihadis from Syria that are coming back now, I'm sure, and saying they're good boys and good girls, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they didn't know what it was about, and they had no idea that Islamic State was burning people alive and raping children and all the rest of it. When we've got a terror threat on our streets this big, growing, year in, year out, why is it? Why are the government taking the dangerous decision to allow people that we know have supported ISIS back into the country? I can't get my head around it. We still need answers. We're still going to be pressing for answers. But I just simply think it's far too big a risk for that to be the case, for us to allow back these people when we see year after year, as I say, the terror threat clearly growing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, as viewers of this show will know, I've said before on here that I've got in touch with the Ministry of Justice, with the Home Office, with the Crown Prosecution Service, with the government directly, and just to ask them, of these 450-odd known jihadis, known former ISIS members that have come back into Britain, how many of them have been prosecuted? And they couldn't give me an answer. They don't hold the figure, but it's interesting that they do seem to hold the figure for the number of people that have been prosecuted for going abroad to fight against ISIS. And nothing is hammered home more on this than, of course, you'll all remember the Parsons Green tube bomber. Well, his court case is ongoing, so obviously I have to be a little bit careful about what we say here, but what I can tell you is about what has been said in court during his trial already, and it is being claimed in court that this bloke, Ahmed Hassan, who of course allegedly tried to detonate a bomb on a tube, Parsons Green, he apparently told the Home Office that he was trained by ISIS on how to kill several months during his application process for asylum. So, I mean, if this is true, and obviously it is an if at the minute, and he's not passing comment on his guilt or not, he's passing comment on the guilt of the Home Office, really, if this is true. Realistically, what kind of state are we in where, as I've said, if this is factually accurate, somebody can sit there in front of a Home Office bod and tell them the truth, it would seem, about what they've been doing over there with their links to ISIS, and then they are freely allowed to not, wander back into Britain and put a bomb on a tube, allegedly. I wonder as well whether or not the people that were looking after this child, this young man, were told of his apparent alleged terrorist links. Really, the government seems more intent on putting people in danger than it does on actually securing us or fighting the terror threat.
Helen's fired up. She said, I'm so fired up. Thank you very much. And an interesting comment here from Luke Shaw. Someone calling themselves Luke Shaw saying, I'm fired up to get rid of your racist lies. Now, Luke Milton, I don't know if you've been around here before, if you watched the show, but if you want to be a troll, that's absolutely fine. What I would say to you is that there's absolutely no lies going on here. You're clearly someone who cannot handle the truth, that there is a growing threat, that hundreds of jihadis have been allowed back into the country, that there are far-right plots, there are Islamist plots, they are growing every year. You clearly can't handle the fact that the British people voted to leave the EU to take back control of their borders because they regard net migration as being way too high. If you find that racist, me old son, I'm sorry, but give your head a wobble as Pat. I'll nick your one there.
That's all right.
Have a word with yourself. Go and read some of these stories, and just because perhaps you disagree with the point of view being put forward, don't try and dispute the facts, my old son, because what we do here at Westminster is report on what is actually going on. And I know some people that are pro-open borders and pro-EU, they can't hack it, they can't bear to hear it, but it's true. This is what's going on, this is what we're highlighting, and we're going to keep doing it at Westminster.com, and that is why our audience is growing, because we know you guys out there like it, stripped away, no BS, straight to the point, giving you live and direct and interactive. Trolls are welcome, but you can expect a bit back, all right?
Well, this is interesting. Jay Roden here is just saying, look, if you disagree with jihad, then in this modern world, then you're far right and you're imprisoned. It's interesting. I think I actually did a piece for Channel 4 News where just before the interview goes live, they say to you, look, can you give your name? Can you spell your name? Can you say your job title? And I was just said, I'm a journalist at Westminster. I've been a journalist for a good number of years. Okay, my name. Then in the broadcast, I was described as a hard right political activist, which I thought was interesting. It does seem as though if you have any views here on regards to border control or about taking a tough stance on law and order and terror and things like that, then you are now branded as far right with potential racist connotations. I think that's wrong. I think that actually stifles debate. It might have go a long way to explaining why we've ended up in this position here in society.
Alexander with an interesting comment, and Luke's getting shellacked from pillar to post. I'm sorry about that, Luke, but clearly there's a lot of people that disagree with your very narrow view of the world. Alexander on Facebook saying we're all Russian bots in the eyes of the whiny left. I mean, it's all a conspiracy, isn't it? It's all prejudiced, or it's all rigged, or it can't just simply be the case that people basically want to live in a country where the government can control who can and can't come in. They don't want to see jihadi scumbags let back into the country, and they want people that are potential terror threat dealt with.
Well, that's it, Brian.
I mean, that is mainstream view. If you can't handle it, my old son, I'm sorry, but it's true.
Well, this is it. And David Laddie just basically said, look, we're patriots, not far right. And that's interesting. I do think, actually, on a personal point, I do think a case needs to be made for this, because it's very easy for people, and we get a lot of comments from people. I get it a lot on Twitter as well, you know, people just saying, oh yeah, but your classic racist views. No, they'll throw out kind of generalised comments here with no basis
nothing behind
whatsoever.
it, is there?
But if in my line of work, if I make accusations or claims that aren't true and they're found not to be true, I get discredited and quite possibly sued. Now, I've never been sued, even though at times I've been threatened with legal action. I've always overcome it because I don't make a career out of lying to people or misleading people. My views aren't extreme whatsoever, always very well evidenced. And I think it's important that people do push back on this kind of relentless search to call anyone that has slightly stronger views on border control or on immigration or on dealing with the terror threat, etc., racist. I mean, that's wrong.
Now, the people of Europe are rising, guys, and we see it election after election after election now. Eurosceptic forces are being backed in a big way, and we just saw it in Italy. And this is another youth revolt. We've got the story again. We'll bring it up there for you, westmonster.com. 65% of young Italians backing Eurosceptic parties. Now, this is really interesting, guys. If we scroll down a bit there, you can actually see the table. So we'll just go down, keep going. Yeah, and what you'll basically see, yeah, a bit further down, it's just underneath that. There we go. What we're looking at here is, if you look under the 18 to 24 category, you'll see a number of Eurosceptic parties got a big vote share. So the anti-establishment five-star movement got voted for by 39% of youngsters. Liga, anti-mass migration, backed by 21%. Worryingly, 4% of youngsters voted for the fascist Casa Pound, and 1% opted for the nationalist Brothers of Italy. Now, as a combination, and we don't want to see Casa Pound backed in any way, but 65% of young people. And for me, you know, under 24, that really, you know, that's normally when you see some of these polls, it's under 30.
Yeah.
For 65% of 18 to 24-year-olds in Italy to have backed parties that are Eurosceptic and anti-mass migration shows you that there is something really big going on inside Italy. You know, youth unemployment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen this mirrored in other countries. We've seen it in France. But I'm really fascinated by this youth revolt we're seeing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it has potential massive consequences for the future of the European Union, doesn't it? I mean, the EU only exists as long as the people want it to, basically. And it would seem that the new generation coming through have been raised with this in a political awakening where they're just simply not happy about what they're seeing in the political reality of the European Union. And this big myth when, you know, people get it a lot, Brexit's get it a lot, oh, well, the old people voted through Brexit, this, that, and the other. Yeah, all right, but across Europe, we're seeing the fact that younger people really are revolting against these EU ideals. They're seeing the direct impact that the EU's policies are having on their day-to-day lives, and they're rebelling against it. Marcus, who's got in touch, said, I can't wait for Sweden's election. I've got no doubt, Marcus, that'll be another one to add to this catalogue of elections across the continent, where we're seeing that not just the young people, but most people actually revolting against European Union's ideals. I really do think its days are numbered.
And the potential coalition now that we can see in Italy, again, we've got this story up. The Italians' number one choice for the combination that you could now see as a coalition in Italy, their number one choice is a combination of the Five Star Movement and Lega. So you're basically combining there an anti-establishment party with an anti-mass migration, anti-Euro party. Good God, Juncker is going to be having sleepless nights. If those two get together and are running Italy, I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see the dynamics that plays in the European Union and potentially even on the Brexit negotiations.
But I think one thing's very interesting here. Jane Lombard's getting in touch saying, I hope Italy stands strong and get out of the EU. It's interesting, actually, because there's a point I'd like to make on this. It seems like whenever a country does vote itself out of the EU or make some moves towards Euroscepticism, there seems to be a lot of support from factions across the EU, such as in Hungary, in Poland, here, obviously, vast swathes of Germany, parts of France, the Czech Republic, Austria, etc., etc. So it will be interesting, isn't it, actually? Because actually, if the EU, the notion is that if the EU breaks down, all of Europe will go to war and hate each other. Well, actually, it just seemed like Europe's kind of actually starting to unite in this Eurosceptic front, isn't it? It'd be an interesting little take, that, on the future EU relations. If the EU broke down, would Europe actually get along a bit better? It's interesting.
We've got another interesting story that came out of the Italian elections. It's not, and again, this is something that's basically been ignored, is that Italy has actually just elected its first ever black senator.
Yeah.
Why has it been ignored? Why is it you probably haven't even heard of this? What is quite a big breakthrough in Italy is that you've seen Tony Iwobi elected, but he's been elected for the anti-mass migration Lega. So of course it doesn't fit the hard right narrative that those that want border controls and are against mass migration are somehow racist. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the narrative.
This would have been all over the press, wouldn't it? If this guy had been elected for one of the left-wing parties, one of the pro-EU parties, he'd be having features written about him in GQ. He'd be having all sorts, wouldn't he? The first ethnic minority to ever come to office in Italy. What a fantastic news story that's been completely ignored by the mainstream media because he doesn't have the same values as them. They can't admit that actually this shows, doesn't it, that a lot of the stuff going on over there is not actually done on racial grounds whatsoever. It's done on the practicalities of the impact that things like the open border, mass migration crisis is having. It's not done simply on racial lines by frothing racists. This is people that have very practical, applicable views. And here's an example of it.
Guys, we're about to go to our last story. If you're enjoying this, please do give us a like. Do give us a retweet. If you can help us, please go to westmonster.com/support. We really do appreciate your support. And we're back on Monday, don't forget. Same time, same place, 1 o'clock on Monday. Now, the final story. Do you remember what they were saying about Donald Trump? This big danger. He was going to be isolationist. He was going to make the world a less safe place. Well, turns out, actually, this could be the man, the US president, that leads to the denuking of the North Korean regime. Because we're now seeing, and again, you can go on westmonster.com to go and have a look at this. You'll see a South Korean official saying, Kim Jong-un has expressed eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible. President Trump appreciated the briefing, said he would meet Kim Jong-un by May to achieve permanent denuclearization. Really interesting. South Korean National Security Advisor explicit here, saying, I explained to President Trump that his leadership and his maximum pressure policy, together with international solidarity, brought us to this juncture. So it turns out, all of these commentators and journalists who said that Trump's tough stance with North Korea, Rocket Man and Fire and Fury and all of that, they all said it was making the world a more dangerous place. They all said it was a terrible idea. And actually, look what's happening now. You're going to have a US president potentially sat down with Kim Jong-un, and potentially we're going to see the denuking of a very dangerous regime. That would make the world a safer place. And once again, it's US President Trump delivering, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Well, look, guys, we're seeing here that Tannis is getting in touch saying, love him or hate him, the Don is doing what he said he would do. At least he's putting his country first. It's very interesting. Getting a lot of comments coming in here, actually, that are praising Trump. You know, look, throughout history here, North Korea has been a constant threat, hasn't it? It's always been this hermit state. It's always been threatening to actually, get hold of nuclear weapons. And once it's threatened to get hold of them, it's also threatened to use them, hasn't it? To blow America off the face of the earth. It's even produced these ridiculous little propaganda clips of America on fire, etc. I mean, look, we've had Barack Obama who's done precious little. In fact, because he did precious little, North Korea got to the brink of actually obtaining nuclear weapons, didn't it? No other US president has seen it as such a pressing issue to actually tackle. And actually, Donald Trump now, with his approach of basically giving no ground whatsoever, being quite diminutive and playing hardball, it would appear, there's a long way to go, it would appear he's actually getting results. And it's interesting, isn't it, that, of course, people can't seem to get their head around this. Well, like I say, like him or loathe him, on this one I think Donald Trump has done well. And if you compare that to Theresa May's policy of relentless appeasement to Brussels and the lack of results she's got there, there's clearly a contrast, isn't there, with how the Don does business.
Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us again today. Thank you very much for your comments. If you've enjoyed today's show, give us a like, give us a retweet, go to westminster.com/support. We'll be back on Monday. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy yourselves. And we'll bring you all the latest on Monday at 1 o'clock, same time, same place. See you there.
Take care, guys.